So I'm sure everyone has seen hot cocoa bombs by now. They're really fun and trendy and a super great, easy DIY gift idea, which I think a lot of us are needing this time of year. So let's make some. These are some of the things you need, including a silicone mold and a silicone brush. I'll link down below to the mold. Most importantly, you'll need some kind of hot cocoa powder. So I'm using equal parts brown sugar and Hershey's cocoa because I always have those things in my cabinet. You could totally use packet hot cocoa or whatever you've got. You'll need to melt down some chocolate. This is almond bark. I've melted it at 30-second intervals for about a minute and a half, stirring in between. You don't want it to melt all the way because if it gets too hot, the chocolate loses what's called its temper and it doesn't have that kind of crack later when it's dry. So just melt it down mostly and you can kind of stir it and it'll melt down the rest of the way. I'm adding some peppermint extract here. I think I did about 10 drops because these particular hot cocoa bombs are going to be peppermint and the extract really just makes everything smell so good. Anyway, so just give it a stir and it'll melt enough for you and then you'll be ready to paint your molds. I would recommend putting them on a sheet pan because it's easy if you pop these in and out of the fridge to harden, and if they're on a sheet pan it just keeps everything stable. So make sure you give them a good solid first coat. Make sure you get an extra amount around the rim because that makes it easier when you take them out later. And definitely give 2 coats. Make sure they're really nice and dry in between the 2 coats. Popping in and out of the fridge really helps with that. So once your chocolate's set and everything is nice and solid, then it's time to take them out. And I was kind of intimidated by this step the first time I did it, but just kind of stretch the mold back and they pop right out. No big deal at all. So then it's time for the fun part, filling them. I scoop about 1/3 of the way full with hot cocoa powder and then it's time for all the fun stuff. Here we're using peppermint and marshmallows and it is possible to get them too full, so don't overstuff, but definitely add a good amount of toppings. You only need to fill half the shells because the other half will become the top part of the cocoa bomb, if that makes sense. I'll show you what I mean here in a minute. But see, nice marshmallow additions, of course. Definitely don't want to get too many because otherwise the marshmallows squish out the sides. Ask me how I know. So now it's time to take a small plate, put it in the microwave for about 30 to 60 seconds so it's warm, and then you'll set the top shell onto the plate and the edges will just get slightly melty, and then you can press the tops and bottoms together to seal. This stuff's kind of fun in my opinion. And a lot of times you'll have little holes in between the 2 pieces where the chocolate didn't quite seal completely. And if that happens, you can just dip your finger in the melted chocolate and kind of smear it around as I'm doing here to close the gaps. Just one word of caution, make sure the chocolate is cool to the touch before you do that. Otherwise it kind of actually melts the hot cocoa bomb more than it patches it. So anyway, just kind of be careful that it's not too hot and it smooths together really easily. And I do have some ugly spots, that's for sure. These are not perfect by any means, but they don't have to be because the beauty of it is when it comes time to decorate these, you cover all of the ugly spots. See, ooh, that was a bad one. But I got it patched just fine. The main goal of patching them is just to make sure the hot cocoa powder doesn't fall out. Anyway, we'll take care of all the ugliness and make them look pretty in this step of decorating. So as you can see, I'm just drizzling with some chocolate. I like to use a fork to drizzle, it makes it really easy. And then sprinkle it with whatever toppings you want. I'm using crushed up candy canes again and little red sprinkles because I thought they needed a bit of a pop of color. So that's it, that's all to them. And don't they look so cute? These make the best gifts, you guys. It's so easy to give to teachers or coaches or neighbors or whoever. Oh yeah, and absolutely, the best part of this is watching the hot cocoa bomb magic. I love it every time. Such a nice little surprise. What a fun treat. Anyway, we have to make more flavors, of course. We decided to do Reese's next. Wasn't that a fun little camera trick? So same sort of deal. You just melt your chocolate and paint your molds. Learn from my experience here and don't buy a brown silicone mold because it makes it really hard to see what you're doing when you're using milk chocolate. But anyway, same process. As you see, we just painted them and popped them right out of the molds, and then it's time to fill again. So we've got just pieces of Reese's peanut butter cups and marshmallows again, and we're gonna do the same thing with the ceiling. Easy as pie. One thing that I think is kind of funny is that these totally look like really pretty little truffles after they're all done and decorated. And I always try to include a little card showing how to melt a hot cocoa bomb because If you don't include that, I'm kind of afraid somebody might think it was actually a truffle and just bite into it, and that would just not be nearly as delicious as an actual hot cocoa bomb, right? Anyway, one trick that I discovered doing this was that it's much easier to decorate hot cocoa bombs when they're in cupcake liners in a cupcake pan. That way you don't have to hold them. Otherwise, it's just, they roll around and it's really a lot more difficult than it needs to be. So use this little hack if you make these because it does make it a lot easier. Next, we're doing Oreo, same powder, although using that Arctic White Land O'Lakes hot cocoa powder that I put a little picture of in the corner would have been really cool for these. That would have just made the hot chocolate more white in color. Now, it would have had some brown because of the Oreo chunks, but I actually have another video on my channel about making Valentine's Day hot cocoa bombs where I did use that white powder, and I dyed the almond bark pink so that when the hot chocolate was melted and made and everything, it was actually a cup of pink hot cocoa, which was so cute. So definitely check that out if you haven't seen it yet. They turned out really fun for Valentine's Day, but the point here is that the options are endless. There are so many different kinds of hot cocoa powder you could use, so many different fillings. These things are tons of fun to make, you guys, because of all the options. The flavors and color combinations are just endless, and I really feel like you can make some pretty perfect gifts using techniques like this. This is s'mores. So I just filled this again with cocoa powder, graham crackers, and marshmallows. And I mean, who doesn't love a s'more, right? I think these would be really cute packaged in little cellophane bags with ribbons and tags. I Google image searched hot cocoa bomb instructions and found a bunch of different things you could print out to tie to a bag. You could put them in a cupcake box. They're so cute, you guys. Anybody who you give these to, I'm sure will love them. So anyway, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.